they don't really relate at all. I mean, they call me the same names, but they're not the same character, just to confuse, which he loves to do. The genesis of this whole thing is basically, you know, I loved him, and I wanted desperately to work with him again. So when we won the grand prize at Cannes, I rather naively put my arm around his shoulder, which made him very uncomfortable, being English and all. And I said, hey, Linz, we're such a great team, let's do another film together. He literally stopped. We're on the Croisette in Cannes. Stopped, the eyes rolled. He said, if you want to work with me again, Malcolm, he goes, I suggest you write a script. He goes, do you think good scripts fall from the trees? I said, no, I don't, but well, I will write one. I'll do it. And so I started writing the synopsis of this film, which was then called The Coffee Man. I had been a coffee salesman before I was a professional actor. And it was just like being in a drama school. You know, you went to one place, you were, you know, Jewish, because they were Jewish. The next place you go to, you were a good Christian boy and going to church. You know, you had to dismantle coffee machines, which I know nothing about. But of course, I spent all day dismantling this machine in Yorkshire. This is selling coffee in Yorkshire, you know, where they only drink tea. It was an absolute farce. And the man that I replaced, incidentally, had been arrested for selling stolen goods. So that I only literally had to make a few telephone calls to, you know, customers that were on the sheets there, and I was selling record amounts of coffee simply because I was just calling people, and he'd been completely neglecting it, so they thought that I was a star salesman. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I wrote this synopsis, and I took it round to Lindsay. It was about 40 pages. And by the way, it was blood, sweat, and tears getting that 40 pages because I wanted to do everything but write this damn thing. But I stayed there, and I knew that if I could just hook him into saying that he liked just a glimmer of it, then I knew I had it hooked, because, of course, I knew that his input would be so immense, and that the film would take on a whole different meaning. You know, what I was writing was what he called a mini script, i.e., just you know, a linear kind of story. You know, a guy going around selling coffee and the various episodes in his life, and so that. And when Lindsay, of course, took it on, it had a whole thing about the world. But anyway, I took it over to him. He looked at it. He read one page. He looked at me and he said, "Is this supposed to be a comedy?" I said, "Yes, it is. It's funny, actually." "Look, yes, it is funny. I ain't got a sense of humour. I'm from the north of England. You're from the south. You don't have a sense of humour at all." He said, "Actually, I'm a Scot." Okay. So he read it. He was humming and hawing, groaning, reading it. And I'm sitting there on tenterhooks. Finally, he finished it. He looked at me and he said, "Malcolm, it's not very good, is it?" I said, "Yes, it is bloody good. It's going to be your next fucking film." He said, "Really? Is it? Well, then you better call David Sherwin." Now, David Sherwin was the writer of If, and a great friend. So I gave the same 40 pages to David. He came over to dinner and went into the bedroom in this little flat I had. He went into the bedroom to read it while we were cooking. He came out and he went, "This is bloody marvellous. It's so funny." "Yeah, well, you're from the north, aren't you?" Anyway, so that was the way it started. It was called Coffee Man. And David and I started working on the script and started to make it more about the world in which we lived. And so we'd write a scene, go into Lindsay, who would shred it, rip it apart, and kick us out and say, go rewrite it. So after a couple of times doing that, I said, look, David, obviously what's happening here is he's feeling ganged up against. So why don't you go in with this scene, and I'll go in with the other one. Let's see how that works. Went in, oh, this writing has improved, Marco. This is so much better. I mean, well, yes, it's only because of your incredible guidance, Lindsay. Yes, of course, of course. So that's the way we started off. And so David and I worked on it for months, and then I went off to do Clockwork Orange with Mr. Kubrick. And so I left them to it. And I'd get cards from Lindsay saying, I'm afraid script not coming on very well, author drunk on the floor. Film will have to be postponed. My heart sank. You know, I'm sitting in the car going off to work with Stanley. Then 3 days later, another postcard. Some splendid work done today. David really in fine form. So that's the way it was, and so we're sitting there in this coffee bar, David and I, and I said, you know, we've got to change this title. It sucks. This, what's the film about, David? He was, oh, I don't know, success and luck, and I went, luck. Oh my God, that's it. Luck. Lucky man. I'm going to call Lindsay now. I was got on the phone in the coin box. Called him and said, we're coming over. I've got some exciting news. He went, oh, for God's sake, well, hurry up, be quick, because I've got an appointment. We rushed over to his flat. We went in there, and he was saying, oh, get on with it. What is it? What is it? I said, sit down. I'm going to whisper the name of your next film. He goes, oh, get on with it. Just tell me. I said, no, sit down. I'm going to whisper it into your ear, and I want it to permeate right through your body. So he sat there very irritated. So I went up and just went, lucky man. He went, oh, lucky man.
You know, there was Peter O'Toole, they once asked him to try and describe the ruling class, and he said what appealed to him was that it was so disobedient. And I thought that word disobedient applies to a number of movies from the early 70s, but I think it is really indelibly defined by Oh Lucky Man. I mean, this is a movie that disobeys our expectations, disobeys, in a way, it begins where If left off. I mean, If ends with an uproar, and Oh Lucky Man, even though it's got the coffee man story, is kind of the uproar that logically follows, even though it's not linear, you know?
Yes, it's really nothing to do with coffee at all. And, but it was the starting point. It was the hook to hang the hat. And it was the thing that made him commit to us. And that was really it, the commitment of this great artist.
Well, it's like when you say he made films about the world, I think that he always began with things that were small and real. You know, he would take a school and push it into the warfare zone, but he began with school as it was. It seemed that it had to appeal to him.
Well, I mean, a great scene in Point, actually, is that there is an interrogation scene, which actually happened to me as I told it. You know, I had these cards of customers to go and call on in Yorkshire, you know, driving around. And I had to go to the English Electric Company, which made rocket engines for some Blue Streak, which was a British missile, which was a terrible failure. But anyway, but I hadn't caught up with all my orders and stuff, so I couldn't find the place. It was like a high secret place with big wires and the whole thing in a gatehouse, and I drove drove slowly past it, looking at it, and I thought, I think this is it. And I pulled over to catch up with my paperwork when, my God, the door was yanked open. I fell out into the pavement, and there were two military policemen standing there. And I said, oh, hello, thank you for noticing me. I've actually come to see the catering manageress, Mrs. Jones. They went, nobody by that name is here. Oh, well, they may have changed. I've come to sell coffee. I'm a coffee salesman. So they went, come back to the gatehouse. They kept me in this gatehouse while they kind of went through, and obviously there were samples of coffee in the car, you know. And so I told this story to Lindsay and all the rest of it, and he took it in his brilliant mind and made it sort of like this huge nuclear thing like we had in Japan a year ago. You know, this whole meltdown of this nuclear facility and everyone scared to death, rushing, getting out of there, and this explosion. But the wonderful thing about it is this interrogation, which you will see. I'm sure people know it, but I think it's one of the most brilliant scenes in it because it's exactly everything, you know, where Lindsay's sort of style is. And of course, at the end of this, they give him the electric shock treatment. You know, he's going, you know, the catering manageress, you know, and you know, all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's just really hilarious. And then, of course, the tea lady comes in and goes, I'd like a cup of tea. Go, yes, 2 sugars. You no. What about the young man? No. Off you go. It's just pure, wonderful farce, really.
Now, it had to be a bit surreal in a sense that you're working on Clockwork Orange while you're also dreaming of doing this. And I wonder, what was the experience of moving from Anderson to Kubrick, for example? I mean, in terms of directorial styles, you know?
Well, it's chalk to cheese. You know, both, of course, great artists in a completely different way. And, you know, because I started my professional life in the theatre, of course, I warmed much more to Lindsay because he would talk through the character and give you, you know, the whole background and the psychological effects and, you know, how you were supposed to feel and why. And he'd take his time to explain, you know. But to be honest with you, because I think we'd already made Clockwork Orange by the time we started shooting this.
Right.
So, because I remember that Lindsay was a little bit intimidated now, because now I was this, you know, big international star, because I'd been in a big movie that had made lots of money. So, you know, it was, oh, you'll get a bit too big for us, are you? Going to Hollywood, are you? Well, no, I'm not, Lindsay. I'm here to work on this film. Oh, good. Well, that's good. Well, then you will get £10,000 for doing this. £10,000, that's I don't know, not even, it's $20,000. That's 16 weeks work, 5 years in the writing, and I mean, that's not very much. Quite enough. We'll all get £10,000. Oh, okay. So that's what we got. And I said, well, what about the, you know, could I get a credit as a screenwriter? Or no, you can't. Are you a screenwriter? Well, no, I mean, I'm an actor. Well, yes. Well, David Sherwin has to make his living by writing scripts. So he will get the credit. Oh, okay. Well, why not? So that's the way it worked. That's the way he was. And irritating sometimes, but it was nice because I was able to lord it over him because he plays the director at the end of A Lucky Man. So, of course, I came in and said, why don't you better get into makeup? And by the way, he goes, I've been into makeup. Oh, sorry. And, surely, you mean the costume? You're not wearing that. Well, what's wrong with this? Of course I'm wearing this. I said, you wear that every day. You can't wear that. You're supposed to be an actor. Because I